Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, and thank you for watching.
For the past few weeks, Central Square has played host to public property as that we have a tragedy of the commons issue, saying happy holidays, Keene.
Voluntary interactions where individuals are free to act so long as they don't initiate force.
This morning, we gather to remember Sergeant Tom Ball.
Thank you for tuning in to Free Keene TV. I'm James Schlesinger.
And I'm Allie Havens. In local news, congratulations goes out to Keene State College and the class of 2012.
Keene State set a record for the largest graduating class size in its 103-year history. 1,196 degrees were awarded to 1,107 graduates.
Good luck, graduates. A recent article in the Atlantic magazine reported that 53% of last year's graduates are unemployed or underemployed. According to the article, some of the graduates that have found work are in fields or jobs that have nothing to do with their degree. The data applies to bachelor degree holders, and the results are the worst in at least 11 years.
The dot-com bust led to a similar situation in the year 2000, when 41% of recent grads were unable to find jobs. Couple that employment situation with the students' loans coming due, and many former students are feeling the crunch.
Next, James has a special editorial to share with us. James?
Thank you, Allie. Over the past year, Derrick J Freeman has been a key player behind the scenes here at Free Keene TV. He arrived in Keene a little less than a year ago and has been very active in the community. Derrick was the first ever Free Keene TV Activist of the Year. Choosing to assert himself in areas of outreach and media, he has had an immutable impact on the community activism. We covered the many arrests he suffered, from Live Free or Dance to Give Peace a Chance, and trespassing at Superior Court to the bike chase. In all, he was facing 4 trials with charges collectively totaling 9 years in jail. Prosecutors, the 3 of them together, offered a global plea deal that would cover all the crimes he committed. According to the plea deal, he will spend as much as 4 months in jail, less with good time. In a blog post on freekeene.com, Derrick sums up the decision by saying, quote, "The past year in Keene has been an invaluable learning experience, and I prefer to take a hit for living free rather than allow paralyzing fear to cause inaction," unquote. I would like the viewer to bear in mind, this man's crime spree is one that has no victims. The state, a fictional character, may claim to be the victim when in fact the only individual to suffer damages is Derrick J Freeman. In each case, Derrick disobeyed the state agents. He did not do as he was told, and in each case, the state agents used force to subdue Derrick and take his body as property. The first incident of disobeying ended with Keene police officer Mike Kopcha spraying mace in Derrick's face while he was standing handcuffed next to the police cruiser. As if that first encounter set the tone, Derrick's final injustice occurred when Keene police officer Finton Moore seemingly lost control and attacked Derrick with his cruiser and truncheon. Don't be confused. This aggressive behavior exhibited by these 2 Keene police officers is a direct response to disobedience. Derrick put out this video as a farewell.
Hi everyone, it's Derrick J. I can't tell you how many times I have recorded this video that I'm about to make and just trashed it saying, oh, it's not perfect and I don't have time to edit it. So I've done probably about 20 of these throughout the last month where I would like to catch people up on, hey, I'm out of my first 10 days in jail and now I'm going back into jail for 75 days, so let me just catch everyone up in this quick video that I don't have time to edit, but I will put it online. So if you're watching this now, I'm probably in jail. Let's see, I have about 3 hours left of relative freedom. Right now I'm under house arrest. Thank you to those of you who have donated and supported me in the past and who continue to support me. Thank you for writing blog posts, writing letters, sending your phone calls, and keeping me in your thoughts and prayers. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to meeting all of you someday. And my jail sentence, so it was 90 days plus a $1,240 fine. I will not pay the state. They hurt people, and I don't think that's a nice thing to do. So rather than pay the fine, I'll be serving 25 days in jail. I'm not asking anyone to pay the fine. I don't think that's the right thing to do. If money is no issue to you and you already pay $1 bajillion in taxes to the state, then yeah, you know, I would accept a donation in order to have those days reduced. But that's really, I'm not asking for anything like that. The 90-day sentence can have up to a third reduced, so that would be 60 days. Plus 25 would be 85. I've already served 10, so 75 is the minimum I'll do. 115, which is really 105, would be the maximum. And when I get out, I'll be visiting Keene, saying my last goodbyes, and then beginning a trip around the continent where I'll be covering the most exciting activism that's happening. And so I want to hear stories from you about what you're doing in your community and what activism excites you the most, because I want to travel out, meet you, live among your Liberty community, and highlight it in video. I'll be doing it a couple of different ways. First, I'll be doing a daily video vlogcast on where I am and what's going on in the local area. Second, I'll be doing 5-day-a-week Free Agents Radio News. Some of you may remember Free Agents Radio News from months past. It's a 5-minute update on the peaceful resistance happening all over the globe. Everywhere, every day, there are people peacefully resisting state aggression. I think it's important to cover those stories. Not only does it show people that this stuff is happening, it also encourages more in the future. Let's see. Things to wrap up before I go. I'm going to miss you all terribly. I can't receive calls in from the jail, but if you'd like to write to me, I recommend using the free service, mail-to-jail.com. And I'll have a little picture up there of my face, a little bit about my victimless crime spree, and you can just email me. You can just send an email to me from that website. Someone will print that out and send it to me at the jail, and I'll be able to write back to you from the jail. Let's see, I have some money going on in my commissary. I don't really know how that's going to work out. I think the important things to get are some deodorant and some other things that aren't given to the people in jail. You have to pay for them. So I'll be getting stamps and envelopes so that I can keep in touch and mail with everyone. You know, feel free to write me if you're looking to have me come out to visit where you're living to cover stories of activism. Oh, and also, I wanted to, this is real big, this thing I've been working on for the past month, the thing that's been keeping me from having time to do all sorts of editing work, is this 90-minute documentary that a very talented videographer, video editor, engineer, he does everything, Beau Davis, has been working on this throughout the past month, and we've really been working on it for the past year, though we really didn't know it until the last week or two. So he's done an incredible job putting together the story of my victimless crime spree, my year spent here in Keene, and I think it's very interesting and very entertaining. So do check it out. I look forward to a peaceful future. Thank you for joining me in this journey. I'm very nervous about the next 75 days and what that has to bring. With my head, you know, resting next to a toilet is going to be a big change of pace for me. But when I'm out, I'm looking forward to you know, meeting you and living in a more comfortable living situation. So, mwah, mwah, thank you for all of your support. I love you, and sorry, no editing on this video, but I look forward to the future. Peace.
Thank you for that, James. Derrick J's activism has provided valuable insight into how the one-size-fits-all system of government reacts to peaceful political dissenters. This brings us to another local activist that also has jail time pending. Beau Davis has fallen victim to the war on drugs. The New Hampshire Drug Task Force snared Mr. Davis and charged him with 3 felonies.
Beau took a plea deal that reduced the charges to a single misdemeanor. His sentence was 6 months in jail with 4 months suspended.
Beau expects that he could be out of jail in 31 days with good time.
Once again, the viewer ought to note that there are no victims in the crimes of Mr. Davis.
In keeping with graduation season, our economic segment focuses on student loans and banking. On the Edge with Max Keiser is broadcast on Iran's Press TV. In this episode of On the Edge, Max has former U.S. Treasury official Dr. Paul Craig Roberts as a guest.
Hi, I'm Max Keiser. You're on the Edge. Time now to go to Georgia and speak with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. Dr. Roberts was the Assistant Secretary to the Treasury under President Ronald Reagan, a former editor at the Wall Street Journal, and a prolific author, including his most recent work, How the Economy Was Lost, The War of the Worlds. Dr. Roberts, welcome back to On the Edge.
It's good to be with you, Max.
Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, let's talk about China and the U.S., and we'll start with the U.S. Student debt has passed $1 trillion, but 50% of young graduates are either jobless or underemployed. Is enslaving the young generation with inescapable debt a way to create a prosperous nation?
Obviously not, Max. You see, when you put people in school and they have to be indebted to get an education, but in the meantime, you send all the jobs out of the country where they can't get employment, then they have debts for which they have no jobs to service. And this is not profitable for anyone. It's a crazy policy, and the country can't recover from this type of loss. You know, we now have essentially 10 years of underemployed university graduates and university graduates who can't find employment that justify the time they spent in university. This is a huge waste of educated resources, and it is worsening. This waste is worsening. And so the GDP growth in the United States is suffering as a consequence.
Right. Well, Dr. Roberts, it's one thing to say that the economy was given away, the manufacturing economy was given away, and this was a gross miscalculation by American policymakers. But there's another dimension to this, which is that the bankers who now run Washington, who now own Barack Obama, they love the fact that you've got 50% of debt slaves coming out of the college and university system. It's in their best interest to create these poor slob debt slaves because they rule the roost in America. They're predatory, predatory bankers. So isn't that also part of the problem? It's a two-edge problem here.
Well, you see, the bankers would be losing money because how do you pay student loans when you don't have a job? Except for the fact that the Federal Reserve covers their losses by giving them money. Now, the sensible solution would be for the Federal Reserve to give the money to the indebted students so they could pay off their loans. So, yes, in this sense, it seems to be designed to keep young people indebted and in a state of servitude. In fact, we may see the return of debtor prisons.
Right. Well, the debtor prisons or prisons across the nation are controlled by private corporations, again, financed by the same banker. So it's, again, in their interest to create debt slaves and the debt slavery trade in prison on top of, and as you point out, it doesn't make any difference if people can't pay off the debt because the federal government will bail them out anyway. Now, going back to 2008, Dr. Roberts, it was postulated that instead of giving the banking sector what now we know is $18 trillion in bailout money and various other subsidies, Barack Obama could have written off every single student loan and every single mortgage and every single credit card debt in the United States, and you would have had a complete restarting of the economy. We'd be on path to a dynamic growth phase, but instead he gave that money to the crooks. Does he have some kind of pathology that prevents him from seeing good in going forward? Is there an issue on that front?
Well, I don't think he's any different from Bush or Cheney or any of the members of Congress. As far as I can tell, the entire Republican Party thinks that it's wrong to help people. If you help people, it means they won't work. And as far as the Republicans are concerned, the only reason there's any unemployment in America is because the government gives handouts to people who are unemployed, so they don't have to work. This is the basis for Republican economic policy, and of course, it's the basis for the corporations' thinking. And any president is a creature of the powerful interests, which are Wall Street, the military security complex, APEC, the drug companies, the oil companies, agribusiness. So all the decisions are made by these very powerful private interests, and the president is just sitting there as a front man.
Right. Well, some argue that the president is being held hostage by special interests. But after these number of years into his campaign, I think we have to start considering maybe they shares the same pathology and mental illness of the prison operators and the warmongers. But let's talk about Americans are told all the time that they must compete with Chinese labor, and yet young Americans enter the labor market. They're saddled with over $25,000 in debt and student loan, or 5 times the average Chinese annual income. So how does that work out, Dr. Roberts?
Well, the American students can't compete with China because there aren't any jobs here. So if the Chinese would let the American students immigrate to China, they could join the Chinese workforce, and then they could get jobs at Chinese wages. But of course, in China, those wages would be much higher in real terms than where the cost of living is much lower than in the United States. But China is not going to accept the immigration of Americans. So what has happened is the United States has simply destroyed its ability to create high productivity, high value jobs, high value added jobs for its own population. You know, the jobs that the Labor Department projects will be created in the next 10 years, hardly any of them require a university education. The universities are becoming irrelevant to employment.
Well, the universities are becoming a pass-through mechanism for banks to create a new class of indentured servants. When they come out of school, there's no jobs for them. Meanwhile, China's real economy grew 4-fold in the past decade. A lot of those people who run the Chinese economy got educated in the American universities, and they went back to China, and they're out competing the U.S., but they don't have that same indentured servitude problem. Now, the American elite and the population seem remarkably unconcerned about this. Is it just because they're the rentier class? They're just taking the cream off the top. They don't really care much below the 1/10 of 1%.
Look, Max, you can't take much cream off a collapsing economy. When it collapses, it's collapsed, and there won't be any cream for the banks or Wall Street or anyone else. So what's really happening is the United States, the elites as well as people, they live in some sort of virtual reality, some sort of artificial reality. As I characterized it recently, they're all plugged into the matrix. And what they think is reality is not. And they have no sense of what's happening to the country and thereby to them. You know, having loans to people who can't pay you back is not a good business model.
Well, you talk about the matrix and plugging into the matrix, but we have seen incredible fortunes made in the matrix with Facebook, Groupon, Twitter. These are all social networking companies, as they're called. They're basically servicing the matrix. Facebook essentially farms people's attention for a certain dollar amount per quarter that is unearned labor. And they're able to convince people the whole 900 million people around the world should be working for Facebook for free, essentially. So they're making hundreds of billions of dollars, and there's a whole nother wave of this passing through Wall Street. So they're making plenty of money on the matrix. So I would argue the fact that there's no money being made on the matrix. There's plenty of money being made on the matrix. It just seems like it's being concentrated in an ever smaller group of those with privileged access to the levers of power and technology that give them access to the matrix.
Well, we do know that the concentration of income is becoming more and more unbalanced, and more all the gains go to the top. But I wasn't talking about whether they make money on the matrix. What I was talking about is the banks don't make money by having loans to people who can't pay them. And that's the problem with student loans. It's the same with the mortgages. It's the same with the credit card debt. If you can't pay the banks back, they're not going to make money. They may be bailed out, But that's a different proposition. Now, the matrix, what the matrix does is we think we're a superpower. We think we can order the world around, that we can invade everybody. We're now preparing, apparently, for military confrontation with China. We can't occupy Baghdad. We can't defeat the Afghans, but we're going to take on the Chinese. I mean, you have to see this as a form of unreality. And the policymakers live in the same reality. I mean, why can't they understand if they can't defeat the Taliban, you know, a few thousand ragtag guys with AK-47s, how are they going to take on China? But they're determined to do it. So this is what I mean by the unreality. The entire American public, the policymakers, the elites themselves live in this unreality, this plugged-in matrix world where a fake reality is criticized, is created for them. And the media is all part of it. The media portrays this false reality. For example, we're always criticizing China for its human rights abuses. Yet, by comparison, the human rights abuses of the United States are far worse, as Ron Utz pointed out recently. And yet, China is portrayed as some sort of authoritarian country where, with a controlled media and full of oppression. And yet it's worse here. And Ron Utz gives the examples. He shows, for example, he compares the Chinese, you remember the infant formula scandal, where Chinese companies adulterated infant formula in order to make more money, and it resulted in widespread sickness of Chinese babies, and 6 of them actually died. Well, the so-called controlled Chinese media was all over it. They got all over the party, Communist Party members who were part of the bribery that permitted this. People were indicted. They were given sentences, long sentences to prison. A couple of the leading perpetrators of this scandal were executed. And then he compares this to what happened to Merck when it put out this arthritis medicine and kept secret the side effects, which was heart attacks. And then after about 10 years, Merck had to quickly withdraw this drug because it was becoming obvious that it had caused up to 500,000 premature deaths from heart attacks. No one was held accountable. Nothing happened. The Food and Drug Administration said, oh, we'll do a better job next time. The Merck chairman or CEO voluntarily resigned, but he got to keep his $50 million. In fact, you see, he walked. Merck walked. So there was no accountability here with a free press, an accountable government, no accountability. In China, authoritarian government controlled press. And there was all kinds of accountability.
Okay, you talk about the contrasting the drug scandal in China versus in the U.S. and the accountability gap, I guess you could call it. And I want to talk about that, but first I want to just kind of go back to this idea of debt, and banks don't make money if people can't pay back their debt. Now, over the past 10 or 15, 20 years, whenever there is a problem with debt and people can't pay their debt, what we find is the banks are able to repackage, resecuritize, and extend maturities, the extend and pretend, and the debt is never paid off, but the indebtedness levels are increased. So in the case of Europe, for example, when Greece or another country can't pay back its debt, they simply roll it up to a long-term funding vehicle, LTRO, and they extend and pretend. In the U.S., when the government can't pay their debt, they just raise the debt ceiling. And now the banks in the U.S. and the banks in Europe are combining forces to create global banking institutions. They deputized the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to be a new global central bank where they're going to take all this debt that can't be paid in the U.S. or the debt that can't be paid in Europe, combine it into a new securitized portfolio of debt, make it the interest rate near zero, extend the maturity to 100 years. In the U.K., they're bringing back 100-year bonds. They're bringing back infinite coupon maturity bonds with no maturity date whatsoever. So there's never any need to pay off any debt as long as you can increase the debt, as they're doing, exponentially, keep interest rates artificially low, and this goes on and on. So I kind of argue this point that
Well,
that was pretty interesting stuff.
Very. He had brought up a lot of good points that the China 6 babies died and people were executed as accountability. I think that's too far.
I don't know about that. That's pretty. I don't like the state executing people because then that's like as if they're saying, on behalf of everyone, we will execute you, and that's creepy to me. I don't like that.
And on the other hand, in America, 500,000 people this drug was responsible or led to their deaths in some fashion due to heart attacks and other problems, and there's no accountability. So who has the better human rights standards, China or the United States? And bringing in that look of the situation, 1% of Americans are in prison. That doesn't seem to be a very good human rights situation either.
Well, it's the most in the world.
Yep.
So
I believe the United States has 25% of the world's inmates.
Right. And I think what allows this kind of thing to happen is that there are probably people watching this right now who are offended that we would suggest that the United States isn't free. What I want to convey is that just the belief that no matter what policies the government that you live under holds over you, that you still consider yourself to be the freest country in the world, well, that's what allows it to happen.
Yeah.
Because you're allowing them to get away with, you know, assassination, murder, war.
Right. I believe that the gentleman, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, he called it living in the matrix initially, and Max misinterpreted that for the internet. But then he said unreality, and I think that's very true, that many people dwell in this illusion that this is the freest country in the world, that there aren't any economic problems, and that nothing bad can ever happen. And how true is that?
Well, some people feel like just even suggesting that there are economic problems is bad for the economy, but I think that economies tend to do better when the people in them are in touch with reality, because then they can make better choices about spending and saving. We were going to talk about silver as a hedge against inflation.
That's right.
You know, the price of food is going up, and I know that there's lots of reports that the economy is slowly but surely improving, but it seems to be a myth. It seems that this economy is broken to some extent, and it needs to correct itself, and that's just a natural part of economics.
Yes, and as you said, the price of food going up. What's a loaf of bread at? What is it, $4 or $3? I'm sure a lot of people could remember when it was much less than that. So get your silver if you're smart. But thank you for watching Free Keene TV. Tune in every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest episode.
You can send any questions, comments, or letters to the editor to tv@freekeene.com.
For more information about the show, you can visit tv.freekeene.com. I'm James Schlesinger.
And I'm Allie Haven saying, give peace chance.